Disappointed. I really believe the right answer is not to have a strike. The right answer is to implement together on a cooperative basis the contract, our last, best, and final offer. We've been at impasse for a long time. Every day that goes by that we're not implementing our contract is well over $2 million of extra cost to taxpayers. We've come to agreement on basically the same terms with 20 other of the government unions. I think it's very reasonable to have overtime start at 40 hours, not 37 and a half. It's very reasonable to allow volunteers to help out in our state parks and in our facilities. It's very reasonable to pay people more money, but do it based on merit or saving taxpayer money. It's very reasonable to have some modest increase in healthcare costs, given what taxpayers, working families in the state have had happen to their own healthcare. Our proposal is very reasonable. And I believe the right answer is to implement our new contract.
The union has said that they want to avoid a strike and hope that you will go back to the negotiating table. Are you willing to do that, or is the offer you made it?
We're at impasse. We've been at impasse for a long time. We met 67 times for more than a year. And we are clearly at impasse. We should implement our contract. It's fair, it's reasonable. And the delays that have been going on, delaying in the courts and et cetera, it's just hurting taxpayers. It's not fair. The labor board, bipartisan labor board, the majority of whom I did not originally put on the labor board. They were put on by Democratic governors prior to me. That labor board unanimously said, we're at impasse. We've been at impasse. Negotiations are done. Those days are gone. We should implement the contract. It's fair and it's reasonable. It's the right thing to do.
So they're saying they're doubling the health care premiums under your proposal. Is that true? And if so, how is that modest?
It is not true. That is absolutely not true. What we've done is given employees different options. If they'd like to keep the platinum coverage, which tax-paying families in Illinois do not have, they'll need to pay a modest amount more. That's true. But if they don't want to pay anything more, they can have a plan that's closer to silver, because that's what they're paying. Basically, they're paying a little bit above bronze rates for platinum coverage. That's not fair. It's not fair to the taxpayers of Illinois. It's not fair to the working families of Illinois. And we're just saying, let's give some reasonable choices that reflect what taxpayers have in their own lives. And it's a reasonable thing for the new contract.
What are the next steps?
Wait, let's get everybody, and then let's, then we'll.
The General Counsel says the office will do everything they can to continue services, use whatever resources you can in the event of a strike. What are some of those resources if 35 to 40,000 people strike?
Well, we are prepared in the eventuality of a strike. We will keep essential services running. We've been preparing for a while because the strike vote's been going on, the discussion has been going on, and we've been at impasse for a long time. This is the legal process that they're entitled to do. Again, I hope they do not strike. That would not be good. But we're prepared, and we'll keep essential services running. I don't think it's appropriate today to go into the detail.
There was some mention, Governor, of kind of your means. Roberta Lynch said it, one of the leaders of locals said, talking to someone with 9 homes, understand what it means, that we would be charged $10,000 more over 4 years for our health care. It doesn't affect the person like you. They think reasonable jobs and benefits, and they don't think it's overreach.
I'm proud of our state employees. They're good people. They work hard. They are the highest paid in America. We have the highest paid state employees in America, and their pay is 20 to 25% more for the same job provided in the private sector by taxpayers. Now, we need a fair system. It needs to be fair, it needs to be balanced. Our new contract makes it more fair, more equitable, more reasonable for taxpayers. We allow our state employees to make more money, but we pay more based upon productivity, on merit, rather than purely seniority. We bring the health care plan more in line with what tax-paying families in the state have. And we have overtime start at 40 hours, which is what taxpayers pay in their lives is when overtime starts. Our proposal is very reasonable, and we should implement it right away, because every day we delay is a day that's costing another somewhere around, depending on which part of the contract gets implemented when, roughly $2.5 million per day. Think how much more money we could put into human services, how much more money we could put into our school system if we had $2.5 million a day going there rather than into government costs that are beyond what other states have and what taxpayers have.
For 40 years, Governor, for 40 years, this has never happened. It's an unprecedented step that AFSCME is taking. It's never come to this point. Why could they get contracts with previous governors, Democrats and Republicans? What's different with your administration?
Why is our state the most bankrupt in America? Why do we have the biggest unfunded pension liability in America? Why do we have the highest paid state employees in America? Why do we have one of the highest unemployment rates in America? Why do we have some of the slowest job growth in America? Why do we have the fifth highest tax burden in America? You know what? We need to change our system. It's broken. It's been broken by our elected officials for decades. We need to change.
Governor, it's historic to announce that, they have the authorization to strike, but they didn't back up any of the percentages with actual numbers. Do you feel that it was a legitimate vote? Do you feel it was carried out properly? And if it's such, a severe consequence like taking a strike, what kind of checks and balances?
I'll let others weigh in on that, whether the strike was legitimate, whether there was a lot of misinformation put to their employees, and how many voted. I don't know. That's my focus is on let's get the contract implemented. It's the right thing to do. Let's start protecting our taxpayers, and let's reward our hardworking, good state employees with a reasonable new deal and pay them more, but based on productivity and merit, not just seniority.
Governor, we're going to go to your proposal for a property tax freeze.
Mm-hmm.
Just at the educational conference you spoke at yesterday, what the educators are concerned about is if you do that,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know where you are on a cost shift of pensions. If both of those are employed, they said it would just destroy their business model, destroy their finances at the district level.
Well, you're blending a number of things in your question. Let me try to answer it as best I can. First, it's important to understand when we say property tax freeze, what does that mean? That basically means we're empowering local residents, local voters, to get more control of their property taxes. That's what it means. Basically, what we're recommending is that property taxes in Illinois can't go up in the future, can't go up like they've been skyrocketing for decades, unless local residents, local voters vote to approve them to go up in a referendum. That's all it means. So if local residents want to put more money in their schools and they want to pay a tax hike themselves to do it, that's fine, they can. But they have a voice in deciding that. That's all it means.
Your budget director, Governor, said that there's like a $7 billion hole in your budget, including that one line, 4.6 from the grand bargain, which you won't say it for 4. Are you for it, and haven't you kicked the can down the road and topped out by not proposing a balanced budget?
Boy, not at all. So we proposed a balanced budget in February of 2015, and we had $6 billion in cuts. Now, some people said, well, it wasn't perfectly balanced because you had some pension change. We can debate that. We should have done the pension change then. We should have done the budget we recommended then. We would be a balanced budget these days if we'd done it back then, and we'd be growing the economy more. Our budget was proposed in 2015. It was completely ignored. The General Assembly did not vote on it. They didn't discuss it. They didn't debate it. They ignored it, and then
But then you didn't propose a balanced budget
and then they went ahead and passed their own $4 billion out-of-balance budget. This is a massive mistake. We can't keep doing this. Illinois keeps passing unbalanced budgets. We've been passing unbalanced budgets for decades. This is the reason we're so bankrupt. This is the reason we have over $180 billion of total debt. It's one of the reasons we have the fifth highest property tax, or highest property taxes, fifth highest tax burden. The second year, I said, okay, you ignored our budget. We had cuts, you ignored them. The next year, I said, there's two options. First, let's work together. Don't ignore what I say. Let's get in the room and negotiate a balanced budget together. They wouldn't do that. Or I said, just authorize me so I can actually implement it. When I'm willing to make cuts, give me the authorization to make the cuts, and I'll do it. They wouldn't give me the authorization to make the cuts, and they wouldn't meet to get a balanced budget. And that second year, they didn't even do any budget. Not only did they not do an unbalanced budget, they didn't do any budget, period. out of the General Assembly. So this year, I said, guys, we can't keep doing this. Let's come together and get a balanced budget. And I laid out, I'm willing to do new taxes. I'm an anti-tax guy. I'd rather shrink the size of government. But I said, I'm willing to do new taxes as part of this. Let's get some structural reform. And I said, let's get the Senate to get their grand bargain done and support them. Cheer them on, help them get it done. I still hope the Senate comes together to get structural changes. We can have some new revenue be part of it. The cuts don't have to be as big if we do that. We'll need some cuts for sure, but cuts, revenue, and structural changes. The Senate's working. I think we should encourage them, come together on a bipartisan basis, be respectful of each other, listen to each other, and try to come to a compromise. Believe me, there's going to be a lot in there that I won't like, but I'm going to go along with it. I'm willing to compromise. I've said nothing has to be in the final deal. I want to be flexible. I want to compromise. But what we've got to do is move the needle on job creation. We have got to create more jobs in Illinois, make our economy more competitive. And we need to improve our school funding. We need the best schools in America. Our school funding has been broken for decades, and we're changing it. And I want to applaud the bipartisan commission that recommended a framework so we can change our education funding. That's a big deal.
What do you say to lawmakers who say that you weighing in on the Senate plan with your parameters actually does more harm than good? They say that it was a political move on your behalf, and you immediately cut an ad talking about the grand bargain, which they said was their work, not yours.
President Cullerton in the media asked me to weigh in. Democrats and Republicans in private asked me to weigh in. That's what I did. I honored their request. And if you listened to what I said, everything that I laid out is very reasonable, and much of the structural change I've been recommending for 2 years is not included in it. You know what? To have a permanent property tax freeze, the House has already passed that. This is not some dangerous, wild, extreme idea. The House has already passed it. The property tax freeze can be and should be permanent. Why can't we have a spending cap that's a true spending cap? The Democrats in 2011, when they did the big income tax hike, they put on a spending cap, except it was a phony spending cap. It wasn't real. They passed it. How about if we do a real spending cap this time? That's what I asked. It's very reasonable. And I said, how about if our workers' comp changes so we become average in our cost, so we can compete? And our Democratic Attorney General has recommended changes to workers' comp. This is not a partisan thing. And Democrats in the state of Massachusetts, Democrats in Massachusetts did workers' comp reform and brought their costs down to be average, actually slightly below average in America. These are bipartisan changes. They're very reasonable. We should do these things, and they should in no way impinge on or hurt the ability to get a final deal.
Governor, is your unbalanced budget response act disingenuous? Because you do actually have the power of the pen, but you didn't use it to your full extent that you could have in the summer of 2020.
No, we don't. See, that's a mischaracterization. No governor has the ability to cut enough to balance the budget with the way it's currently structured, with continuing appropriations, consent decrees, court orders, federal mandates. You can't just, the governor can't unilaterally cut enough.
Which of those permanent ones would you want to target first if you had this power?
Again, I've laid out parameters. I've proposed many things. I'll just let my prior statements speak for themselves.
Illinois, teen reach, homelessness prevention, substance abuse. Can you talk about why are those particular human service programs zeroed out in your proposal?
Again, what we proposed is one basis for discussion. If people have other ideas, I'm open to that. Many types of human services have been zeroed out in every proposal for 3 years that we've made. But we've always said we're open to negotiating differences. Most of the human services that are zero in a particular line item, that's an earmark special for a particular one provider. Many services for epilepsy, which I support, services for developmentally disabled, which I support, services for autism, which I support, are also covered in other buckets within the budget. So it's not like we're not providing any services. They're just not done in a special line item earmark.
Governor, would you consider with these historically low interest rates, refinancing the pension obligations so you can lower that grant cost?
Yes, certainly. I'm very open. So one of the things I've recommended is the statute around what interest rate we pay on our unpaid bills. I'm willing to look at the borrowing trade-offs of funding more into the pensions with other sources of cash. This is important. You're raising a very good issue. It doesn't get enough discussion in the media. I'll highlight a point. By not paying our pensions for 35 years, you guys weren't ever talking about it very much, but we were borrowing it over 7.5%. Okay, it didn't get media play, but we've been borrowing it over 7.5% for 35 years. It's the reason we're in such big trouble. Massive mistake when we didn't fund the ARC, the actually required amount for our pensions. Just so you understand the math, by not paying our bills, which is appalling, we should be paying our bills, but the effective interest rate on our unpaid bills is roughly 6.7%. So it's less than not paying the pensions. But people scream about not paying the bills. Nobody screams about borrowing at a higher rate by not paying the pensions. This is how broken our system is. And that's on simple interest. The compound effective interest of the unpaid bills is more like 5.3% versus over 7.5%. So what we need to do is be thoughtful about maybe refinancing some, paying down our unpaid bills, but really pension reform. This is the reason the pension reform, and I've said I'll do President Cullerton's plan for pension reform. We need to reform our pensions because that's a debt that's stunningly expensive. And that's why I've recommended having a tier 3 that's an option for state employees. If we can change the system over time, it'll protect our employees but also protect taxpayers.
Last question.
Yeah.
Couple if I could, first, can you outline
Isn't he doing a violation when he does that?
any specifics you can outline about how you want to maneuver Massachusetts when it comes to workers' comp, and also should Obama's birthday be a state holiday?
I like him, so I'm going to let him break the rules. So on the president's birthday, I think it's it's a wonderful thing. It's incredibly proud for Illinois that the president came from Illinois. I think it's awesome, and I think we should celebrate it. I don't think it should be a formal holiday with paid, forced time off, but I think it should be a day of acknowledgement and celebration. In terms of, your first question? Oh, Massachusetts. So what I'm trying to point out is, let's just be competitive. Let's move Illinois' workers' comp costs somewhere in the average. How about instead of being the 5th, 6th, or 7th highest cost, how about if we're number 27, like Massachusetts? And Massachusetts did that. They were one of the most expensive workers' comp states in America. They reformed their system, brought their costs down. I think they're number 27. I'd have to check, but it's like that now. And all I'm saying is Democrats did that. And they don't have people suffering on the sidewalk because they got hurt at work and couldn't get covered. This is a reasonable, bipartisan, balanced thing to do. I'm just saying, let's be thoughtful about that. Our Democratic Attorney General says we can do this. This is not a partisan thing. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate you.